When your own child looks you in the eye and treats you like a burden, something inside you breaks quietly. My son, my only son, stood in my living room that afternoon and said words I never imagined I'd hear. Mom, my wife, the kids, and her mother are moving in. It's final. No discussion. His tone wasn't asking. It was commanding. And before I could even open my mouth, he turned his back and walked out the door. I sat there in silence, clutching the edge of my worn sofa, staring at the door he'd just slammed. That sound, it echoed like thunder in my heart. This was the same boy I had carried for 9 months, nursed through sleepless nights, and prayed for when I couldn't afford dinner myself. And now, he couldn't even afford me a word of respect. The ticking clock on the wall felt louder with every passing second. I could almost hear the ghosts of my late husband's words. Mary, promise me one thing, never let anyone, no matter who, take away your peace in this house. He had built this home brick by brick. Every corner still whispered his presence. But now, it was as if my son wanted to replace that peace with chaos. 2 hours later, the rumble of a van broke the silence. I looked out the window. There they were, my son, his wife, their 2 little kids, and her mother, boxers stacked high, laughter echoing, as if I were invisible. My son's wife, sharp eyes, cold smile, stepped out first. Oh, she's home, she said, like I was some stranger in my own house. Her mother followed, waving casually. We'll make it cozy together, won't we? I stayed by the doorway, forcing a polite smile. My heart, however, was trembling. I wanted to ask why. Why couldn't they have talked to me first? Why did I suddenly feel like a guest in my own home? But before I could speak, my son came around the car and said, Mom, move your things from the downstairs bedroom. We'll take that's it's bigger. That's when something shifted inside me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like his mother. I felt like an obstacle. I went back inside, closed the door behind me, and stood in front of the family photo on the mantel. My husband's smiling face seemed to ask me silently, what will you do now, Mary? And as tears rolled down my wrinkled cheeks, I whispered, don't worry, love. They won't take this home from me so easily. Because what they didn't know was that I had already made a decision 2 weeks ago, one that would change everything the moment they stepped inside. The sound of the car doors slamming echoed through the driveway. My son's wife walked ahead proudly, holding a clipboard and barking orders to her mother. Put the kids' beds in first. Mom, you take the upstairs room. We'll handle the kitchen later. They hadn't even entered, and already my house was being divided like a property listing. I waited by the door, my old hands gripping the frame. The door was locked, not out of anger, but preparation. A small, pale sign hung neatly on the gate. Property under new ownership, entry restricted. When they saw it, confusion spread across their faces. My son frowned, reading it twice. Mom, what's this? I slowly opened the door, my face calm but my eyes unflinching. This, I said softly, is called peace, Michael. Something I intend to protect. He blinked. Mom, stop with the drama. We're moving in. Remember, we talked about this. I nodded gently. Oh yes, you talked. I listened. His wife scoffed. You can't just block us from entering. We're family. Family, I repeated, almost whispering. Family doesn't barge in. Family knocks. The silence that followed was thick. Even the children looked confused. Then I handed him an envelope. Inside were the legal papers. The house, our home, was no longer in my name. 2 weeks earlier, I had transferred ownership to a charitable trust in my late husband's memory, a home for widowed women with nowhere to go. This house, I said, now belongs to women who were forgotten by their own families. Women like me. My son's face turned pale. His wife gasped, clutching her chest. You can't do that, she shouted. This was supposed to be ours. I smiled faintly. You said, it's final, no discussion. I just took your words seriously. Her mother muttered something under her breath, but I didn't care to hear. I had cried enough for a lifetime. Now I felt something else free. My son stepped closer, his voice cracking. Mom, where will we go? The kids. I touched his arm gently. You'll go home, son, wherever your heart truly belongs. But this house is no longer a place for orders. It's a place for peace. Behind him, the wind carried the scent of the roses my husband once planted. It was as if he was standing beside me, proud. And as their car engine started again, I whispered quietly to myself, he kept his promise, and so did I. But as I turned back toward the house, my phone buzzed with a message from a name I hadn't seen in years. Mary, it's time. They've arrived at the charity home. They need you. A new chapter was beginning, one my son would never see coming. Some lessons come softly, and some arrive like thunder. When my son drove away that afternoon, I thought the story had ended, but destiny had another scene waiting, one that would pierce his heart deeper than any words I could ever say. Days turned into weeks. The house was quiet now, too quiet. Where once my son's laughter echoed in childhood, only the wind whispered now. I spent my mornings tending to the garden, helping the widows who now lived here. Their stories were heavy, but their smiles were healing. Each night, I'd light a candle near my husband's photo. I did what you'd have done, I'd whisper, and somehow, I always felt he was listening. Then, one rainy evening, the sound of a car pulling into the driveway jolted me. Through the curtain, I saw him, my son, standing in the downpour, drenched, clutching something in his hands. His eyes were red, swollen, broken. When I opened the door, he fell to his knees on the porch. "Mom, I'm sorry." His voice cracked under the weight of regret. Behind him, his wife and her mother weren't there, only the kids huddled in the car, sleeping. I helped him stand. He looked thinner, older, as if time had punished him. "Mom, she left me," he whispered. "Took everything, even the money I saved." I felt my heart tighten. I wanted to hold him, but part of me hesitated. "Pain teaches you to be careful with your love," she said. He continued, trembling. "She never wanted to live with an old woman. She just wanted the house." He looked at me, tears streaming down his face. "And I let her treat you like nothing." The silence between us was thick with memories. I saw the boy who once held my hand crossing the street, the child who used to run to me after school, and now, here he was, shattered. He handed me an envelope wet from rain. Inside were photos, his wife smiling with another man, the same man who had helped them pack that day. My lips trembled, but not out of shock. It was pity. Pity for a son who had traded love for arrogance and lost both. I placed my hand on his cheek. "Michael," I said softly, "sometimes life doesn't punish us to destroy us. It punishes us to wake us up." He broke down completely then, sobbing into my shoulder. I held him just as I did when he was a child, my heart aching, my tears falling silently into his hair. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end, because there was still one thing he didn't know. The true reason I gave this house away. He thought I'd done it out of anger, but the truth was love. I stepped back, wiped his tears, and whispered, "Tomorrow, come with me. I have something to show you." He looked confused, but nodded, and as the rain kept falling outside, I turned toward my husband's portrait again, and whispered, "Maybe now, he's ready to understand." The road to the charity home was silent. My son drove slowly, his eyes hollow, his face pale from sleepless nights. Every now and then, I'd glance at him, the same man who once laughed freely, now clutching the steering wheel like he was holding on to the last thread of his life. When we reached the gates, he looked around in confusion. "Mom, why are we here?" I didn't answer. I simply led him inside. As we walked through the hall, the sound of quiet laughter and old hymns filled the air. Elderly women sat in rocking chairs, some knitting, others sharing stories. Then one of them looked up and smiled. "Mary, you're back." My son stared at them, puzzled. "You know these people?" I nodded softly. "Yes, they're my family now." He looked at me, disbelief flickering in his eyes. "But why did you give our house to them?" I turned to him, my voice trembling. "Because they remind me of what I could have become alone, forgotten, waiting for someone who never comes home." I pointed toward an older woman sitting near the window. She used to have a son too. He never visited until the day they brought her ashes. My son's eyes dropped to the floor. His lips quivered, but no words came out. We kept walking until we reached a small room at the end of the corridor. On the wall hung a bronze plaque, the Edward and Mary Foundation, Home for Widows in memory of a husband who never stopped loving. He read it slowly, tears welling up. "Dad," he whispered. I nodded. "Your father built that house with his bare hands, Michael. Every brick had love in it. When you tried to move in without asking, I realized you weren't protecting the family. You were trying to own love. And love can't be owned, son. It can only be given." He covered his face, sobbing quietly. "Mom, I ruined everything. I was blinded." I touched his shoulder gently. "No, you were lost. And now you've found your way home." We sat there for a long while, saying nothing, just listening to the rain tapping against the windows. Before leaving, one of the widows handed him a small, framed photo. It was a picture of my husband holding baby Michael. On the back, in faded ink, were my husband's words. "If he ever forgets what love looks like, bring him here. He'll remember." My son's knees buckled. He cried into my hands like a child again. And in that moment, I forgave him, not because he deserved it, but because peace deserved to live inside me. As we drove back, the sun broke through the clouds. He looked at me through tearful eyes and whispered, "Mom, can I come home?" I smiled faintly, staring at the horizon. You already are, son. Just not the way you thought. Sometimes, God doesn't punish with fire or thunder. He punishes with reflection, so that when you finally see your own reflection in your mother's tears, you understand what love really was, and what you lost trying to control it.